It started with a scream. Not the kind you hear in a horror movie, the kind that rips through your chest because it's coming from somewhere you love. By the time the neighbours called 911, there was already blood pooling across the marble floor of the Caldwell estate. The police would later say the scene looked personal, the kind of rage you can't fake. And at the centre of it all was a woman in a crimson silk robe, holding a knife she swore she never touched. Her name was Alyssa Jordan, 34 years old, wife, neighbour, former maid of honour at her best friend's wedding, and now, the prime suspect in her best friend's murder. To understand how it came to this, how a friendship survived high school breakups, bad jobs, late-night crying calls, only to be ripped apart in a way so violent it made national news, you have to go back. Back to when Kimberly Tate and Alyssa were inseparable. Back to when they made promises over cheap wine that they'd never let a man come between them. Back to when they believed each other's happiness was more important than their own. Because that was before the man they both loved, Ethan, walked into their lives. Before Kimberly's breakup. Before Alyssa accidentally fell in love with him. Before vows were exchanged. And Kimberly's smile at the wedding hid a truth Alyssa didn't see. The betrayal didn't happen overnight. It crept in quietly. In the way Kimberly started visiting more often, lingering in the kitchen with Ethan just a little too long. The way they'd exchange looks over Alyssa's shoulder when they thought she wasn't watching. At first, Alyssa brushed it off. She had to. Kimberly was her best friend, the sister she never had, the one person she'd trusted with her darkest secrets. And Ethan was her husband, the man she'd promised to love and trust for the rest of her life. But that trust, it was already bleeding out, one stolen glance at a time. In a few months, there would be no turning back, no apologies, no chance to fix it. Only one night, one choice, one body on the floor, and the question the entire country would ask when the news broke. Was Alyssa Jordan a betrayed wife pushed to her breaking point, or a cold-blooded killer who planned it all? If your best friend betrayed you like this, would you walk away quietly, or make them regret it forever? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Before the murder, before the scandal, before every camera in the country was pointed at her face, Alyssa Jordan was just a girl from a small Georgia town who believed in two things: that true love could survive anything, and that Kimberly Tate would be her best friend for life. They met in the 9th grade. Kimberly was the loud one, hair always perfect, laugh that carried down the hallways, the kind of confidence Alyssa wished she could borrow. Alyssa was the quiet one, careful with her words, content to let Kimberly take the spotlight. They balanced each other. By senior year, they were inseparable. Sleepovers that stretched until sunrise. Shared secrets that could ruin each other if they ever told. They'd sit on Alyssa's back porch and swear, pinky swear, that no man, no matter how handsome or charming, would ever come between them. Then came Ethan. He walked into their lives like he already knew he belonged there. Taller than both of them, with that easy southern smile and a way of making whoever he talked to feel like the most important person in the room. But it was Kimberly he was there for, at least at first. They dated for 2 years. He was at all the girls' dinners, game nights, beach trips, always holding Kimberly's hand while Alyssa teased her about being disgustingly in love. And when they broke up, it was messy. Kimberly swore she'd never speak to him again. Alyssa was the one who sat with her through the crying, the ice cream, the nights of, "I can't believe I wasted 2 years." So when Alyssa ran into Ethan months later at a coffee shop, she told herself it was nothing, just catching up, just friendly. But friendly turned into texts. Texts turned into dinners. Dinners turned into something she swore she didn't plan. And by the time she realized she was falling for him, she was already in too deep to walk away. When Alyssa told Kimberly about her relationship with Ethan, she braced herself for an explosion. But Kimberly didn't yell. She didn't cry. She just smiled, that sharp, unreadable smile, and said, "If he makes you happy, that's all that matters." Alyssa believed her. She wanted to believe her. So when Ethan proposed a year later, Kimberly stood right beside Alyssa as her maid of honor. She held the bouquet, fixed the veil, gave a toast that had everyone laughing and tearing up. It was perfect, or at least it looked perfect. But the thing about best friends, they know you, they know exactly how to walk back into your life and exactly how to destroy it from the inside. And Kimberly? She wasn't done with Ethan. Not yet. They say betrayal hits hardest when it comes from the people you'd least suspect. But for Alyssa, the hardest part wasn't finding out her best friend wanted her husband. It was realizing she might have given her the keys to do it. If your best friend dated your husband first, would you ever feel completely safe in that friendship? Tell me in the comments. I'm reading everyone. It didn't happen overnight. Betrayal never does. It starts small. A comment here, a glance there. Little things you brush off because admitting they matter feels paranoid. For Alyssa, it was the text messages. At first, they were harmless. Kimberly sending Ethan a funny meme, Ethan replying with a thumbs up. But then there were more. Texts late at night, texts with no context, no reason to be sent at 11:47 p.m. on a Tuesday. When Alyssa asked Ethan about it, he laughed. "She's your best friend. Don't you trust her?" And of course she did, or at least she thought she did. Then came the dinners. Kimberly would drop by unannounced around 6 p.m, just as Alyssa was finishing up work emails. She'd find her sitting at the kitchen counter with Ethan, a glass of wine in hand, talking in that low, private tone people use when they've been in conversation long before you walked in. When Alyssa joined them, the air would shift. Conversations stopped mid-sentence, smiles too quick, a shared glance before one of them changed the subject. It was nothing she could prove, nothing she could even explain without sounding like the insecure wife. The first real crack came on a Sunday. Alyssa had gone to brunch with a former co-worker and was driving home when she realized she left her sunglasses at the cafe. She doubled back, grabbed them, and made it home 20 minutes earlier than Ethan expected. When she walked in, she heard laughter, loud, easy, intimate laughter, coming from the living room. Not the kind she'd heard in weeks, not the kind Ethan used with her anymore. She stepped into the doorway and saw Kimberly's hand on Ethan's knee. It stayed there a second too long before she pulled it back and made some excuse about telling a funny story. Ethan smiled at Alyssa, but it didn't reach his eyes. From then on, Alyssa started noticing everything. The way Ethan's phone was always face down on the counter. The way Kimberly had started wearing perfume to movie nights at their place. The way her husband suddenly had inside jokes with her best friend, jokes Alyssa wasn't part of. And the way Kimberly's smile lingered, just a fraction longer, when Ethan was in the room. One night, Alyssa woke up to find Ethan wasn't in bed. She padded down the hall and saw the light under the office door. When she opened it, Ethan jumped, slammed his laptop shut like a teenager caught on a website he shouldn't be on. He said he was working on a surprise for her. Alyssa didn't press. She just went back to bed. But lying there in the dark, she realized something that made her chest tighten. She wasn't losing her husband to a stranger. She was losing him to the only person she'd ever trusted enough to replace her. The cruelest betrayals don't come from enemies. They come from the people who already know exactly where to cut. If you saw your best friend acting this way with your partner, would you confront them immediately? Or wait until you had proof? Let me know in the comments. I'm curious what you'd do. It had been months since Alyssa first felt the shift, but suspicion isn't proof. Suspicion keeps you awake at night. Proof changes everything. And proof has a way of finding you when you stop looking for it. It was late September, the first hint of cool air in Georgia. Kimberly had been coming around more than ever, helping Alyssa plan Ethan's surprise birthday dinner. At least, that's what she called it. Ethan seemed happy. Too happy. He laughed louder, smiled more, but rarely with Alyssa in the room. That Saturday, Alyssa decided to deep clean the house while Ethan ran errands. It wasn't snooping, not at first. But in the process of reorganizing the bedroom closet, she found something odd. A small gift-wrapped box tucked behind Ethan's overnight bag. The paper was a glossy rose gold, the kind Kimberly always used. Alyssa's chest tightened. She picked it up, weighing it in her hands. It was light, almost too light. She told herself it was nothing, maybe cufflinks, maybe cologne. But then she saw it, a folded receipt in the corner of the closet. It wasn't for the gift. It was for a 2-night stay at the Magnolia Inn, a boutique hotel in Savannah, dated just 2 weeks earlier. And there were 2 breakfasts on the bill, 2 dinners, 1 bottle of champagne, no charges to her card, no mention of a work trip. Alyssa's mind raced, her stomach turned, but she didn't cry. Not yet. She placed the receipt back exactly where she found it and stepped away from the closet. The rest of the day moved in slow motion. Every sound, the creak of the floor, the hum of the fridge, felt louder, every thought sharper. She needed more than a receipt. She needed to see it with her own eyes. That night, while Ethan showered, Alyssa took his phone from the nightstand. It was locked, as always, but she'd seen him enter the passcode before, 924, his birthday. The phone opened. She scrolled through his messages. Nothing from Kimberly, not a single text. But when she opened the Photos app, her breath caught. There they were, dozens of selfies. Kimberly, lying in a hotel bed in nothing but Ethan's shirt. Ethan shirtless, kissing her neck. Videos of them laughing, clinking glasses, feeding each other dessert in a dimly lit restaurant. And then, a picture that made Alyssa's knees give out. Kimberly sitting in their living room wearing Alyssa's robe. Ethan's hand resting on her thigh. The timestamp was from the night Alyssa had been away visiting her mother. Alyssa closed the phone and sat in the dark, shaking. Her mind replayed every moment she had defended them, every time she'd told herself she was overthinking. She thought about the wedding day, Kimberly holding her bouquet. She thought about the pinky swears on her back porch as teenagers. And she thought about the one rule they'd made all those years ago. Never let a man come between us. But Kimberly hadn't just broken that rule. She'd set it on fire, ground the ashes into the carpet and laughed while Alyssa stood in the smoke. Alyssa didn't scream. She didn't confront them. She slid the phone back onto the nightstand and climbed into bed before Ethan got out of the shower. When he kissed her goodnight, she smiled. Because she knew something he didn't. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Sometimes the worst thing you can do to someone who's betrayed you is not leave. It's to stay, to watch, to wait. If you found this kind of proof, would you confront them immediately? Or would you wait and plan your next move? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. Alyssa didn't sleep that night, not a blink. She lay in bed listening to Ethan's breathing, memorizing the rhythm. It was steady, relaxed. He had no idea. In the morning she made coffee, kissed him on the cheek, and told him she'd be busy with errands. In reality, she spent the day driving, not to stores but to places where she could think without being watched. Her first stop was the old river overlook where she and Kimberly used to sit in high school. She stared at the water and wondered how long her best friend had been laughing behind her back. Then she started making lists. List 1. What she knew. Ethan and Kimberly were sleeping together. She had photo proof, receipts, and dates. List 2. What she didn't know. How often? Where else? Who else might know? List 3. What she wanted. At first, the word divorce came to mind, but the more she sat there, the more another word pushed itself to the front. Payback. That week, Alyssa played her part perfectly. She laughed at Ethan's jokes. She sent Kimberly casual texts about dinner plans. She baked cookies and dropped some off at Kimberly's place like nothing was wrong. If either of them suspected, they didn't show it. But behind the smile, Alyssa was building a case. She bought a second phone and started recording conversations, casual ones, where Kimberly would slip and mention details Alyssa could file away. She went through credit card statements, noting every unexplained purchase. She checked hotel websites for booking logs. And then she found it. A reservation in Ethan's name for a weekend getaway. Next month. 2 guests. Private villa. Alyssa didn't cancel it. She didn't confront him. She booked a room at the same resort instead. A different name, different building. This would be her stage, and she would choose the night, the timing, and the ending. 2 weeks before the trip, she set her final plan in motion. She invited Kimberly over for a wine night, just the two of them. They laughed, reminisced, and drank until the edge of tension blurred. When Kimberly went to the bathroom, Alyssa slipped Ethan's phone from his jacket and forwarded herself a chain of messages. Messages that were enough to ruin him twice over. When Kimberly came back, Alyssa smiled like nothing had happened. By the time the weekend getaway arrived, everything was in place. Her bag was packed, her second phone fully charged, and in the hidden compartment of her suitcase, something heavy wrapped in cloth. She didn't think about the consequences. She didn't think about the headlines. She thought about one thing: Kimberly and Ethan, sitting across from her, realizing too late that the person they'd underestimated was the one holding all the power now. They say revenge is a dish best served cold. But Alyssa wasn't serving anything cold. Hers would be red hot and permanent. Would you confront them in public, or wait until you had them somewhere no one could hear the truth? Tell me in the comments. The villa was beautiful. White stone walls, a balcony overlooking the ocean. It was the kind of place people proposed, the kind of place you took someone you planned to spend your life with. Ethan had booked it for Kimberly, but Alyssa had booked herself into the same resort, just 2 buildings away. She waited until their second night. By then, they were comfortable, too comfortable. She knew the routine: dinner, wine, laughter. And then the lights would dim. Alyssa dressed carefully, black wrap dress, hair pinned back. Nothing that would make her stand out. Until it was too late. She slipped the heavy cloth-wrapped object into her bag and walked to their villa. Her heart wasn't racing. It was steady, cold. The door wasn't locked. Of course it wasn't. They thought they were alone here. Inside, she could hear music, their song ironically from her wedding. Her footsteps were silent against the marble as she stepped into the living room. They were on the couch. Kimberly in Ethan's shirt, Ethan's arm draped over her. The look on their faces when they saw her, a mix of shock and calculation, would be burned into her mind forever. "Alyssa, what are you?" Ethan started, but she didn't answer. She pulled the second phone from her bag and hit play. Their voices filled the room, recorded messages, laughing about how easy it had been to keep her in the dark, mocking her trust, making plans for a future without her. Kimberly's smile cracked. Ethan's eyes went cold. "You need to leave," he said. But Alyssa wasn't leaving. The argument escalated fast, Kimberly's voice shrill, Ethan's tone sharp. Old secrets spilled, about the night Alyssa's mother died, about money missing from her accounts, about how they'd been planning this for over a year. And then Ethan made a mistake. He grabbed her arm, hard. The same arm he'd held on their wedding day. Alyssa's hand moved before she thought. The weight in her bag found her grip. One swing, then another. By the time she stopped, Ethan wasn't moving. Kimberly was screaming. The next moments blurred. Alyssa remembered the knife, the one from the villa's kitchen. She remembered Kimberly reaching for the door, and she remembered thinking, "If you leave here alive, you'll destroy me." When the police arrived, called by guests who'd heard the commotion, they found Alyssa sitting on the floor, her dress stained, her hands steady. 2 bodies lay nearby. She didn't fight them when they cuffed her. She didn't speak as they read her rights, because in her mind, the trial had already happened. The verdict, already decided. The headlines would be merciless. Wife kills husband and best friend in luxury resort. Podcasts would argue whether it was a crime of passion or a calculated execution. And the jury, well, that was for another day. But Alyssa? She had no regrets. They say betrayal cuts deepest when it comes from the ones you love. But betrayal, Alyssa learned, is also the one wound you're never expected to heal from. And when the people you die for are the same ones destroying you, sometimes the only way to take back your life is to take theirs first. If you were Alyssa, would you have walked away or done exactly what she did? Tell me in the comments, I read every single one.